Chapter 23, Surveillance. Mighty warriors joined Jonathan, now called Aldhib, and his wife, Joy, handpicked from both of their teams for the mission. Axel, a speedster, and Yom, the young woman whom Waninyekova discovered hiding as a man in the camp, volunteered. Yom showed herself as a worthy and trusted warrior, whose gift was telepathy. Amardad was an interpreter. She could speak any language, spoken or written, computer or humanoid. If Fuza could enlarge himself 100 times his size, and Zubin was the opposite, he would reduce his size to 100 times smaller. One would imagine that Fuza would have 100 times his strength, which he did, but Zubin, at his height, had the same power as Fuza did at his smaller size, whereas they nicknamed him Hormiga. Then there was Amato. He was a weapon expert before joining Waninyekova. His gift was the ability to emulate any weapon he thought about, whether large or small. Moskim and Awatri were men of great strength, and lastly, Dahlia, a shapeshifter, could transform into any person that she touched or saw. They also had a few warriors with them headed to find family members by their side. Aldhib and Joy's team prepared all night for their long 8.5-day journey to Cuauhtémoc. That morning, they all headed southeast toward the abandoned town of Los Lunas, New Mexico, avoiding all micro-towns, as instructed by Waninyekova. They all were equipped with their Torah, weapons, communication devices, tablet, and what is known as Aldhib and Elisha's survival kit, simply called A&E's. The survival kit consisted of 4 modified cubes for better cloaking and, with increased dimensions, a transparent tent that could conceal your body heat from radar, which was redesigned with Obey's help, and a first aid kit. They arrived at the outskirts of the abandoned town of Las Crusades, New Mexico. Ifuza and Zubin shared a cube because they tried linking 8 cubes together, and no one got any sleep, because Ifuza and Zubin snored the entire night. Aldhib jokingly called them the Grizzlies of Madinat Altanwar. Madinat Altanwar was Arabic, a name that Amardad came up with to call their new home, which meant City of Enlightenment. Aldhib and Joy shared a cube and linked 3 cubes, one for the Grizzlies of Madinat Altanwar, another for the rest of the men, another for the women, and one for themselves. But they all gathered food and ate together. After a long day, Aldhib sat at the center of the room, working on his tablet in his cube. He sent the screen's image to the wall. I wish someone would make some up-to-date movies. These films dated back to 1888 and ended somewhere around 2312. There are millions of them, but I think I've seen them all, Joy said. Just put on a comedy. I never get tired of them, plus Hollywood doesn't exist anymore, just this metaverse stuff. He gave her the tablet. Pick something, and I'll watch whatever you watch. She strolled through the tablet, calling out titles. All in the Family, The Jeffersons, Sanford and Son. Aldhib interrupted. Waninyekova once told my brother and me about one of the first Wakatilian filmmakers and novelists during the beginning of that era, named Oscar Michaud, who created 44 silent and talking films. Hollywood films marginalized roles and perpetuated stereotypes of blacks, so Michaud started his own movie production company. His first silent film and the first Wakatilian film at that, in this country called The Homesteader, based on one of his novels. During the Jim Crow era, he released another silent film, Within Our Gates, made by a Wakatilian, for Wakatilians, and used a Wakatilian cast. His movie, Body and Soul, introduced actor Paul Leroy Robeson, a concert artist, stage and film actor, professional football player, and activist. Joy smiled. Look at you, sounding like Waninyekova. Aldhib blushed and was about to speak when he saw something on the tablet. Hey baby, let's watch that one. I used to watch that all the time with my brother, and the commercials were priceless looking at how they were behind back then, compared to now. You know what, this is my first solo mission, it has always been me and Jom. Joy picked up her communication device. I hate to disappoint you and your brother arrangements, I can go home and call him here. Aldhib said, if you don't put that thing down, I was just stating a fact, not a wish, silly Willy. Bring your ass here, it's me and you against the world now. Bring that ass to me, Joy said. Okay, you sure? Aldhib smiled. Me and you, baby, just me and you. Joy smiled back and picked up the tablet. Now I knew there would be something we both like. I always loved comedies too. Aldhib sat down next to Joy as she continued. We used to watch shows like Martin, Baby, I'm Back, and Night Court. Aldhib paused the show. Joy said, What are you doing? Aldhib said, I was letting you finish talking. Joy smiled. I'm finished. Let's watch the show. Aldhib pressed play. As he laid his head on Joy's lap as they both laughed, watching the show being casted on the wall, Aldhib checked the radar for anything usual then and sent that image to the wall next to the screen as they watched classic TV shows and movies. After watching a few shows, Aldhib started rapping alone with one of the show's theme songs. Joy looked at Aldhib, seeing her staring. Okay, what is it? I got something stuck between my teeth again? I don't know why, you just don't tell me stuff. Instead of staring at me, I feel like an exhibit. Joy smiled. No, silly Willy, I heard you sing, and you're pretty good. I want you to sing a song with me. Aldhib laughed. I don't sing, I don't know where you get that from. Joy looked at him. I just heard you. Aldhib smiled. Oh. Baby, that's rapping. Joy smiled. It's singing to me. Will you help me sing my favorite song? Aldhib smiled. Sure. Joy jumped up smiling, and Aldhib loved when Joy got excited about something. She played a classic song entitled Into You by Timia that featured a rapper by the name of Fabulous.
I think you're truly something special. Just what my dreams are really made of. Let's stay together, boy. There's no one like you around. Oh, baby.
Baby girl.
Aldhib was so impressed with her singing, and that she was singing to him from the heart. He came in rapping. Lies, games, plain insane. That was me, when I was a womanizing little boy back then. Women were just toys and felt that love didn't make no sense. But God opened my eyes, and to my surprise I found you. And tears formed in Joy's eyes as Aldhib opened up to her in the song. They finished the chorus together until the end of the song. They wiped each other's tears, and Aldhib looked at Joy. It is getting late, so I'm going to call it a night. Joy turned to him. I want to watch another episode of Martin, and then I will join you. She laughed at something on the screen. Good night, baby. Aldhib, unnoticed by Joy, got completely nude and walked up to Joy. She looked at him. Aldhib got up on his elbow, looked Joy in the eyes. I love you. She smiled. Why? He said. You make me happy. I've never felt happiness or knew what happiness was, most of my life, and Sabaoth had the nerves to bring me a wife, named Joy. She smiled and laid her head on his chest until they both fell asleep. Meanwhile, back at Mad and at Altonware, Wanyanyekavu, Jamie, and Kenji were training when Obey and Jome approached. We have a band of men about 75 or so on jet ships, and another 75 to 100 on horses about 10 miles behind them approaching us from the east. Wiping the sweat from his brow, Wanyanyekavu told Jome and Obey. You two grab your men, and let's see who we have here, and by the way, grab Grace. Wanyanyekavu and his men exited the south gate, other than by spaceship or jet ship. It was the only entrance into or out of Mad Inn at Altonware. About halfway to the men on jet ships, Wanyanyekavu said aloud. Oedipus man, I hope he's here so we can finally get rid of him. Having all sharpshooters posted in different locations, Wanyanyekavu and 16 of his men approached them in a diamond-shaped formation. The closer they got to them, the more they spread out into one straight horizontal line formation. Wanyanyekavu stopped about a mile from the men, pulling out a white flag, and spoke to his men by his earpiece. I hope to spare as many as I can, but I doubt it, if I find one man who isn't evil. But there just might be one. Wanyanyekavu bowed his head and prayed, Sabaoth, if all these men are evil, let them feel your wrath. However, if any of these men are not evil, let it be your will that somehow they are spared. Amen. Everyone who heard his voice said, Amen. Wanyanyekova looked up. These jet ships and horses we could use. As a matter of fact, Jom, we need to go get those jet ships your brother buried. Wanyanyekova saw a vision. Sharpshooters, you will pick off those I call out, but I'm just stalling, while waiting for those on horseback to get closer. Wanyanyekova held the white flag high to hide Grace, not knowing if they had scopes, and said to Grace, Make a small dirt tornado and make your way behind the men on horses, and kill the last ones and work your way towards us, quickly and quietly as possible. Then he told his men, Stay within range and shoot to kill. Now, standing about 3 to 4 yards from the men on jet ships, Wanyanyekova said, Good day, my friends. The men held up their weapons, and he could hear Obey shouting, Wanyanyekova, get out of there! Wanyanyekova spoke softly back into his mic. Obey, I've seen everything before it has happened, remember? Then Wanyanyekova started talking to the men. Never mind that, my men are worried about me. Now, where were we? Oh yeah, please lower your weapon. It makes my men kind of nervous, plus, we are just here to talk, right? Given the order to lower their weapons by the leader of the men dropped their jet ships evenly to Wanyanyekova's height, and some men in the rear lowered their weapons as well. Wanyanyekova whispered into the earpiece to his men. All the ones that didn't lower their weapons on my mark, I got 4 of them, to my right, you all need to get them first. The man who appeared to be the leader looked at Wanyanyekova. You are either an imbecile or crazy. Who is in charge here? For this land belongs to Abenians and Oedipus, and I am Tilo, the son and high commander of Oedipus. Wanyanyekova looked at the man. I guess I am the one in charge, and I'm Wanyanyekova, a servant of Sabaoth, and Abenians is dead. We killed it. Tilo smiled. Yes, you're an imbecile. There's no way in hell your silly ass could have killed B6. Now tell your leader to show himself. Wanyanyekova held a finger up. Excuse me. Then whispered into his earpiece. You need to kill the fat one with the white jet ship also, on my mark. Wanyanyekova looked up at the man again. Sorry about that, my men keep telling me you are wicked men, but I said no, all men are good, right? Wanyanyekova counted down in his mind, and then shouted. Now! A bullet went through Tilo's skull, killing him as he fell to the ground. The rest of the men who had their weapons raised also fell to their deaths. As a man in front of Wanyanyekova reached for his weapon, Wanyanyekova quickly took 2 wooden stars out and killed 2 men that were behind him before killing him. There stood 4 men standing there, in awe. Wanyanyekova looked at the men. Sorry about that, those men were a little bit too trigger-happy for me. He spoke into his mic. You will see them raise their weapon, those need to be killed first, and we got the rest. Grabbing the man in front of him, he forced the man around, using him as a shield while he took out his samurai and started killing those whom his men didn't. Covered in blood, the men that were on horseback were upon him. Wanyanyekova held up his hands. Yo! This is not what it seems. As he lowered his arms to sling the blood off his blade. Seeing Grace behind them covered in blood, for she had disarmed all the men and killed the rest. Wanyanyekova was no longer in a joking mood. I know whom you seek, and I know why you seek him, but my question to you is, do you want to die here, or do you choose another place, maybe even another day to rest? Look behind you and see that your men are all gone. And you do not have any weapons. The men looked behind them and saw there were only 20 of them left. Hold on, said one of the men, but Wanyanyekova interrupted him and threw a star that instantly killed him. No, you hold your tongue, and keep your peace, you Wakatilian dog. Speaking the words of the man, before they were spoken. By now, the rest of the men were surrounded and realized that they didn't have any weapons. Wanyanyekova said, Sent this message to your leader Oedipus. Your first son I killed was out of self-defense, and the other 2 as well, and all of the corpses you see here will rot, and soon will be dry bones that the animals will pick off for their meals. Unless you have more children for me to kill, or you, yourself want to die, come do it yourself, if you want me dead. But you, too, shall be a feast for the wild animals. I have seen your drugs and money, and they are all destroyed alongside your partner in crime, Abeni B6, for it, too, is dead. It is now your turn, so that I may continue my work for Sabaoth. But I will give you time to repent and send no more after me, and I will leave you alone. Come at me, one more time, I shall surely kill you and all that is with you according to Sabaoth will. One Yakov pointed at another man. You! I see what you want to do, but I tell you, if you want to live another day, that knife, in your boot will remain there. He continued. We are the best of the best. I would imagine after the other attempts on my life had failed, you would have counted your loss and moved on, but men like you are far too gone even to serve Sabaoth. I know this. He will probably have you all killed for this, returning without my head, and his so-called High Commander is dead also. But maybe he won't. The men all stood there confused, and just turned around. No, no, no! One Yakova said. These horses and weapons are now mine. You will walk and tell Oedipus and AQ1 that this is no longer their land. No man's land is now Sabaoth's land. 15 men stood there while the rest walked away. One of the men approached. My name is Chimaka, and this is my brother Albors. We want to stay here with you. One Yakova checked the men to see where their hearts were and looked at them. Welcome. The rest left headed east toward El Paso, and One Yakova and his men gathered up the jet ships, horses, weapons, and whatever rations on the dead men and headed back to camp. One Yakova looked at Obe and Jom as he entered the gate's entrance. There will be a war between Oedipus, and he shall surely die, for he is evil. Obe said. That is for certain. One Yakova got on one of the jet ships. How do you ride this thing? Obe said. Training in the morning, after our training with Jamie and Kenji. One Yakova shook his head. Everyone needs to drive one, so training is for everyone. While I'm thinking about it, again, we need those we left behind that Jonathan, excuse me, Aldhib, hid in the desert. One Yakova paused for a while and smiled. You know what? Leave the GPS tracking on this one, for I have an idea. Well, you better make that too. Sabaoth just made a way for us to get to Aldhib and the rest of them back here quicker. It took them, 8.5 days to get there. How long will we get to them on one of these? Obed said. About 3.5 to 4 hours, or less. One Yakova smiled and shook his head. Sabaoth is able. Obed replied. Indeed, he is. But what is the other one for? One Yakova smiled. Still working on that idea, either way, Oedipus will come to me. Later that night, after everyone had gone in for the night, One Yakova laid down and stared up at the stars and wrote. You were black. You were black. Mind, body, and soul. What makes me and my people unique? Who possess a 9 DNA series, unlike the rest, who possess 6. My people have never considered ourselves better than the rest. You said that. It was you who confessed that. However, they seem to ride our backs about these facts. And what makes you you? A person, a human. No different from the rest. Unique in just that fact. But one thing is for certain, we have a long ride home. And we have to do it alone. My people, we have a long ride home. They took the body already, and used it, abused it, molested it, and then abandoned it. That alone works on the mind. Start believing the truth is a lie. And a lie is the truth. Started doing things to prove you are worthy. But the things you do are beneath thee. I'm talking to both you and me. Saying, it's my fault, and maybe I deserve it. That's your mind talking, that feeling of being alone, and it looks to be far gone. But the soul. Oh, that soul has the strength of 10,000 men alone. So come out of the weaker one. It'll be like opening the window of your body. Opening up the window of your mind. And shine on through. Destroying that haunts you. You asked why? Why did I get chosen? To get harassed? Abused, used, molested, and tested. I'll say, Because you were chosen, you were appointed, you were blessed, you were gifted, you were anointed, you were black. Aldhib and his group left Las Cruces, New Mexico, and came to Laguna de Bustillos. They circled the abandoned town to the northernmost region, for Joy thought of her father and didn't want to see the destruction. Once they cleared that area, they established a base of operation. Expecting desert, they were happily surprised. It was green land with rich soil, perfect for farming. Aldhib places 3 cubes in the lakes with booby traps. 2 tents on top of the land. While they strategically placed their underground campsites in a location that would benefit from any attack on the camp. Once everything was in place, they all searched for food. Some went fishing while others went hunting, and the women combined the remains of each rations bag and made a large feast. Sitting there reading a map and eating his meal, Aldhib said to the group, "Even though we are about 5 hours away, I don't want anyone to think we all are together. We will not meet here again until after 7 days, once we get the intel we need. If something happens or there is an emergency, please abandon your posts and meet here." Pointing to the map of an abandoned building in Vista Hermosa as he continued, "If you cannot make it here, use the communication devices, and we will do what we have to do accordingly." He studied the map and paused for a second. "Now, according to Jamie, Highway 5 from Colonia Alvaro Obregon to Cuauhtémoc has heavy traffic, 24-hour transportation to and from Colonia Anahuac, where they change shift." Pointing at Axel, "Your speed causes dust trails, so you will only work at night. In the morning, just sit tight as the rest of us do our thing. During the day, you will rest here and hold the fort down. Observe and monitor Highway 5 and the lake. Myself, Joy, and Amardad will check out this Colonia Anahuac. Efusa, you and Yon, start at Colonia Alvaro Obregon and work your way to Pizzeria La Sierra. Zubin, you and Dahlia start at Cuauhtémoc and work your way up to Pizzeria La Sierra." Taking another bite of his food, once you all reach Pizzeria La Sierra, head back to camp. Zubin, you and Dahlia should leave at about 3 a.m., enough time to reach the town by morning. And Efusa, you and Young leave around 5 a.m. They finished discussing their plans and quickly laid down for the night. The next morning, while heading to Colonia Anahuac, Aldhib was in a good mood and had an idea, and said with a smile, "Okay, look, y'all gonna be my hoes, and I'll be y'all pimp." Joy surprisingly said, "I don't know how to act like no prostitute." Amardad said, "It's easy. You have to switch really hard." Joy, with a puzzled look, "Switch?" Amardad smiled. "You know, move your hips." Aldhib looked at Amardad. "Go ahead and show her." Amardad walked ahead of them a few feet, switched her hips, turned around, and headed back toward them. "Like this," Joy said. "Oh, I can do that." She walked up, barely moving her hips, and said, "Like this?" Aldhib burst out laughing. "Hell to the nah! You're not making a penny like that, and I see you got that disease they were talking about the other day." Joy, with a strange look, "What disease?" Aldhib said, "No ass at all." Aldhib and Amardad started laughing even harder. Joy got mad, and Aldhib grabbed her. "I'm just playing around, baby. You got all the little ass I need, enough to grip and dip." Amardad was blushing, while Joy slowly put a smile on her face. Then Aldhib jokingly said, "Ha ha hell, y'all bitches better have my money," and started running away from Joy, as she chased him. Zubin and Dahlia reached Cuauhtémoc around 8:30 a.m. and saw one bus driver headed to the back of a building. Dahlia turned to Zubin. "Are you thinking what I'm thinking?" Zubin said. "No, what are you thinking?" Dahlia said. "We take his bus and run his route while we listen in on people's conversations." Zubin said. "What about him? He might alert someone." Dahlia replied. "We lock him up, tie him up, whatever. We'll figure that out later." They rushed to the back of the building, where he was urinating, and Zubin pinned him against the wall as the urine sprayed all over his shoes. The man said, "Hey!" Zubin and Dahlia interrogated the man for 5 minutes. Zubin told the old man, "Sorry, but I can't take any chances. Knocking the old man out, he tied his hands and feet with wires and rags he found scattered around the area. Dahlia shapeshifted into the bus driver and Zubin shrank himself down and jumped into one of her pockets. Loading all their weapons into bags, they loaded the bus. People were upset and fussing over being late. Dahlia started the bus and did as the bus driver instructed her to pick up and drop off as they headed to Pizzeria La Sierra. At the same time, Zubin walked amongst the people, as small as he could, learning what he could. Arriving at Colonia Alvaro Obregon around 7:45 a.m., Efusa and Yong, already covered in dust and sand, added just a bit more to appear homeless and handicapped. Efusa makes one of his feet much larger than the other, and Yong puts on some broken shades she found earlier to appear blind. Walking up to busy intersections and asking for money, while Yong read people's minds. Efusa wrote notes as Yong gave them to him. At 4:30 p.m., all four warriors met secretly at Pizzeria La Sierra on a dead-end road off Campo 15, discussing their findings and realizing that the ship's arrival was that night. They determined that it was time to return to camp. Still an hour and a half to camp, they all were weary, hungry, and tired. When they heard space cruisers coming in their direction, they all hid as 3 space cruisers carrying 20 people passed them and landed just ahead of them. Zubin looked, and it was the old bus driver he had knocked out. He looked carefully and saw 4 women, 8 men, a few children, and an old lady holding tightly to the bus driver. They were tied up while 4 men started beating and terrifying the men. 3 men jumped off the space cruisers as the driver cut off the engines while one of them approached the women. "I'm going to start with you, Granny," holding his grouch as he continued. "I know the old man hasn't satisfied you. Maybe you'll get one last orgasm before you die. Afterward, I work my way down to that baby boy over there. Then my men will follow as your husband and these children watch, and then I will kill y'all and leave you here to rot." Zubin and Efusa didn't hesitate and arose from their hiding. "Let's see how you are supposed to do that when you are dead." The old man raised his head. "That's him. That's the guy that took my bus." And Zubin said to the old man, "Sorry, my friend, but I needed to do that. But I promise you one thing, you will not die today." The rest of the warriors walked out with their weapons drawn and ready to fight. The 4 men stopped beating the men, and the brutes turned toward Efusa and the warriors, as the leader said, "Who the fuck are you, and what business is it of yours on what I do?" Zubin said, "If only I had time, I would teach you how to respect women and children, but that'll be a quick lesson before you die. I would love for your death to be done by a woman." Yong didn't hesitate and said, "My pleasure." Yong rushed toward the man, and as the man lunged out to punch her, she quickly cut off his arm as she made a backflip. She quickly decapitated the man. Before the rest of the men could react, the rest of the warriors threw stars, killing them instantly as Zubin and Efusa untied the men and put them in the space cruisers while Yong and Dahlia untied the women and children and they all headed toward the campsite.